summary, all the behaviors of everything can be explained through gravity and inertia. And another thing left out that I just described is heat as well, which is still just gravity and inertia interacting. But all the mechanics that the four forces of the standard model describe are better explained through gravity interacting at different scalings. So just gravity and inertia is the only true mechanics of the universe. Gravity in and of itself is unexplainable, just like how it's unexplainable how matter exists in the first place. We have no conceptualization of how that is possible from our scaling to understand how matter could be created. But then inertia is another mechanic of matter, that it has its mass and it is in movement, and it has that inertia. But it also has that fundamental property of gravity, where it has this property of attraction. So that is part one. Part one, as shown in some pictures here, the scale is a subatomic. So we're going to start at the smallest scale. And now when viewing the atom, it's seen as a blurry cloud, named the electron cloud, because you can't see what is actually happening, the true behavior of the atom, and this is very mysterious. So that is the setting for part one. Part one is the smallest scale, the subatomic scale. So to begin, conceptualize matter in the form of electrons, neutrons, and protons. Those three particles that make up the atoms of everything that we have here, me and everything, other than light, is made up of these subatomic particles. So these particles are as dense as possible for their size. They're pure matter condensed. Now I'm going to show some pictures of what I'm trying to show here, but they're basically pure matter. Now what this means for the proton and neutron specifically is that they have very strong gravity. They have gravity for their size that's as strong as possible within that atomic world, within that very small atomic scale. So this makes the atomic nucleus's gravity, it can attract and then cling radiation that's coming in and all over in the world. This radiation is bound to that gravity of the nucleus, and it's not actually part of the structure, but it's essentially stuck there orbiting the nucleus. This radiation is not actually part, like I said, it's not part of the structure. And as it's being held there by the nucleus in orbital mechanics, that amount of radiation around the nucleus is its heat. Now this, in and of itself, you think is that electron cloud, but it's slightly more that is what the electron cloud is inherently. It would just be a big blurry mess of radiation. But it's more complicated. The actual observations that we're seeing is not inherently just that. Because the greater the heat and the energy level of that nucleus, this radiation interacts with the orbitals of the electrons. They interact with each other, and then they control the radiation that's being leaked out. So actually, the image of the electron cloud that you can see, that blurry image, is actually radiation that is allowed to leave due to this mechanics of the orbitals of the electrons interacting with that heat that's bound to the nucleus of the atom. And the quantity of that heat essentially dictates the orbital mechanics. So that is part one. In summary, part two, within the standard model, now we're moving up in scaling now to the atomic scale, slightly larger than the subatomic scale. So within the status quo, there is described that the neutron is negative, the proton is positive, and the electron is negatively charged. And these are can be thought of as like magnetic or electrical charges. And that is what creates the behaviors understood for the atomic properties to exist. Why a neutron can't contain a electron on its own, why a proton can. So that is the background to part two. All right, part two. The true behavior of the neutron and the proton interacting with the electron is instead the fact that the neutron is slightly larger than the proton. Now, if I was going to dive deep into this, I described the quarks, and that can help better understand how they are exactly the same particle inherently, the proton and the neutron. They're just at different ends of, essentially you can think of it as like extra weight that it can carry. So the neutron is at the end of it where it has a lot extra weight, and the proton is nothing extra on it. And the neutron is radiating all the time. And what this creates is a dual mechanism of radiation and attraction. So the neutron has a pushing effect on the electrons and is creating more heat inherently to that electron cloud, mechanics described in part 1. And the proton is more of a pulling effect where it's just its gravity interacting, is not radiating in the same way as the neutron. So what happens is you need both of those particles to allow stable atomic structure. For everything beyond the first isotope of hydrogen, which only has one proton, you always need protons and neutrons for the atomic, for an atom to be stable. As it goes up the periodic table and has all the different properties of the different elements, it's all different amounts of protons and neutrons within them, balancing each other out so that they can inherently remain stable. But one thing to remember about this is that there's constantly radiation and heat coming in from everywhere. So it's not like it's a dead particle with nothing interacting with it, no heat coming in. That might interact differently, and of course it does. But in the actual world, there is an inherent amount of heat all the time. And this has a part to play as well. But that's how you can understand this, conceptualize it, in how gravity mixed with that radiation has this dual property of attraction and also repulsion, which is necessary for the stable atoms. So that is part 2.